Hi everyone, you're on l17 channel and today we're going to take apart Tecno Pova 6. First of all, we need to remove the card tray. To do this, we use a special eject tool. Insert it into the hole and carefully push the card tray out. If the tray doesn't come out easily, we can additionally use tweezers. Next, we need to heat the surface of the back cover to a temperature of approximately 70 degrees Celsius, or about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. For this we use a heating mat, but you can also use a hair dryer. And after about 10 minutes, we can move on to removing the back cover. For this we use a thin plastic film. Insert it into the gap between the back cover and the mid frame and carefully run it along the edge, cutting through the adhesive layer. As always, we need to be careful around the camera area, so we don't accidentally touch the lenses. Also, we shouldn't insert the film too deep inside, since we don't know exactly what is located under the back cover. So we carefully disconnect the back cover. There are no components installed on the back cover. After that, we need to cover the camera lenses. For this we use a special protective film. Please note that we apply the film not on the lenses themselves, but on the rim around them. Also pay attention to how the backlight or flash looks on this model. We need to be careful because there are screws located underneath it. Accordingly, we move on to removing the screws. For this we use a 1.5mm Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips #30. Carefully remove the screws and place them on a special surface in a specific order. Very often screws do not thread well if they are installed in the wrong holes. If the screws don't come out easily and get stuck, we can additionally use tweezers. After that, we move on to removing the screws in the lower part. Please note that some screws are different, so it is very important to remember their correct positions. Once the screws are removed, we proceed to disconnect the mid-frame. To do this, we use a thin plastic film. Insert it into the gap between the mid-frame and the display frame near the card tray opening. Carefully run it along the edge, release several clips, and then switch to a thicker tool. As always, the cover is firmly held along the edges. And as always, we need to be careful around the side buttons and along the edge of the display, so we don't accidentally damage it. And so we carefully work our way around the edge. There is no need to rush, don't use force, so as not to damage the display. We also need to keep in mind that when we remove the mid-frame, the backlight or flash flex cable is positioned in such a way that if we suddenly leave the cover, we can tear this cable. So we carefully leave the mid-frame. On the mid-frame we can see contact traces and antenna pads. Next we need to disconnect the battery connectors using a non-metallic tool. There are two battery connectors. But first it is better to disconnect the connector and remove the flash flex cable. Now we can disconnect the two battery connectors. On one side, this can be done easily with a non-metallic tool, of course. On the other side, we first need to disconnect the small rear camera. We disconnect the rear camera, then disconnect the bracket that holds the connector on which the rear camera was resting. We remove the bracket and set it aside. And now we can disconnect the second battery connector. After that, we move to the lower part. In the lower part we can disconnect the connectors, we disconnect the fingerprint sensor connector, we disconnect the coaxial cable connector, we disconnect the interconnect flex cable connector. And of course, it is better to remove the loudspeaker cover. Carefully pry it up at the correct spot and disconnect the speaker cover. Now we can remove the subboard. Again, carefully pry it up by the edge, lift it and take it out. On the subboard we have the charging port, microphone, headset jack port and other components on the reverse side. In the display frame, the fingerprint sensor and the vibration motor remain. And now our traditional quick test of the microphone opening. The microphone hole is located in the display frame, has an L-shaped design and is protected by a mesh or membrane. The microphone body itself is located on the subboard on the opposite side of the microphone hole. Accordingly, if we insert something into the microphone hole, we won't be able to damage the microphone itself this way, but we still definitely damage the membrane. Next we move on to the motherboard. On the motherboard we disconnect the coaxial cable connector and release the cable itself from the clips that secure it. After that we can disconnect the interconnect flex cable connector and the display flex cable connector. We can also disconnect the large rear camera and move it aside. Traditionally for Tecno devices, the heat dissipating film is glued to the front camera, and the front camera is disconnected after removing the motherboard from the opposite side. So first, it is better to peel off the heat dissipating film so it doesn't get in the way. We carefully remove it, we will need it again during reassembly. Now we can remove the motherboard. On the back side, the motherboard may be held in place with a thermal paste, so carefully pry it up in the correct spot, lift it and remove it. Then we flip it over and disconnect the connector. We remove the front camera. Now we can cover the front camera lens with a protective film so that debris doesn't get on it. At the top, the earpiece speaker remains in place. Finally, we move on to removing the battery. We have the transparent protective layer that needs to be folded back and a green pull tab that needs to be pulled upward to remove the battery. So we fold the transparent layer back as much as possible so it doesn't hold the battery and pull the tab upward. We pull and unfortunately the pull tab tears off halfway. The battery doesn't come out easily, it is stuck in some area. We carefully try to loosen the battery. We don't know exactly where the battery is still adhered. We try using a thin plastic film. For example, in Samsung smartphones, the battery usually sticks around the edges. So we try to remove the battery and tear off the remaining part of the pull tab. Now we definitely need to remove the battery somehow. We fold back the transparent layer from the other side and look for an approach from which we can carefully leave the battery. Carefully from the edge, preferably with a non-metallic tool, we leave the battery. There is no need to use force, don't press on the display frame so as not to accidentally damage the flex cables or the display. It is also better not to press hard on the battery itself, especially with a metal tool, since we can damage the battery casing. And finally, we remove the battery. We take a look at what is under the battery. Under the battery there are the interconnect flex cable and the display flex cable. So that completes the disassembly. Thank you for watching and see you in our new videos, either on our Telegram channel or on our website.
Okay guys, now we're done. Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, read our articles on our website. Take care of yourself, and until next video.